Great to meet everyone, of course, by the way. So wherever you are around the world, and I hope that we're speaking clearly enough so we know everybody can understand us. We'll try to make sure that English is well understood. So my name is Colin Pace. I'm originally from San Francisco, California, but I've been living in Verona, Italy for the last 5 years now. My background is, my educational background has nothing to do with UX UI, so I think that's kind of a standard theme for probably a lot of designers, is you don't necessarily have to have a formal education in design. So I originally studied actually Spanish literature, and I studied like close connection to kind of the Latino community in California where I grew up. And then I also studied economics as well. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do after college, and so of course when I graduated I was kind of tinkering on with a few different ideas. And eventually started to work in the wine industry in pricing and analytics before a friend asked me to join a startup. And so we went ahead and joined a startup. And from there, I really entered into the world of mostly product management, but I was also very curious in design as well. And so we were working with a full-time designer, and I was always constantly, with that annoying kind of product manager right over the shoulder, looking what he's doing, move this here, move that there, move this here. And then eventually I got to the point where I said, well, no, I want to be able to do this as well. I have a lot of ideas that I'd like to see kind of come to fruition. And so I started to just basically teach myself. So this was back in 2012, 13. So there wasn't a whole lot of design tools out there back then. There was kind of a lot of designers were still unfortunately even using Photoshop at that point. And then obviously Sketch was starting to kind of come up at that point. And so I got started on Sketch, kind of self-taught. There's a lot of resources online even back then. And so kind of just through trial and error, just kind of copying things that were going out. First, what I just started to do is copy the own product we were working on. And then eventually just start kind of building other kind of copies and screens of other apps out there as well. But then obviously continue to just iterate on the own product we're making. And so basically after my experience with the startup, I moved into an enterprise company where I met Gene as well. We were working in the mortgage industry, kind of building very, very complex systems. For me, my biggest interest was in product design at that point. So it was less in kind of the UI aspect, but more in kind of the end-to-end product solution, how everything kind of relates, ties together. So it wasn't just like, focusing on this area, just on UX and UI, but what is the big picture of things? And so I was there for about 3, almost 4 years. And then Gene and I went ahead and started Uxcel. But that's just a little bit about myself. So I'll let Gene kind of introduce himself, and then we can kind of talk about the history of Uxcel.
Yeah. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Josefina. Yeah, my name is Gene, and I'm originally from Belarus. Last year, I live in Poland, in Warsaw, and I think I've been in design for about 10 years now. If we're talking about education, I'm by education, I have engineering degree. I'm an engineer, so I'm very much coming from the kind of analytical and systematic approach for design. But yeah, the design is self-taught, 100% self-taught. I went through some courses eventually, etc. But starting with the gigs here and there with friends, clients, and freelancer.com is one of my first places where I got some of my gigs. So I've been studying, evolving, improving my skills in design for 8 to 10 years before starting Uxcel. And coming from self-taught experience of design, I think it's one of the biggest biggest reasons probably why the Uxcel is emerged, because I probably seen the need in that for all the people out there. I see that there is still not enough educational resources, and that's what Uxcel partly trying to solve for the people. But always been designer, always been passionate about design, always trying to improve my skills, and that's I think what we want our community to constantly do, and that's what probably Uxcel is all about.
Right. No, I think you really said it perfectly. I couldn't have said it better. I think those two. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you really touched upon, like, at least for myself, those were my two biggest goals with Uxcel. I think for me, kind of the biggest passion and reason why I'm behind this is, I really love the idea of bringing high quality education, democratizing it, making it accessible for everyone. There's no reason that, somebody who's interested in design needs to go and spend, $50,000, $100,000 on a formal education to get a high quality education. Yeah, well, so we actually, it's pretty exciting. So obviously, I mean, getting back to one other point that you touched upon, and I'll kind of go into that part, was you also talked about kind of the gamification, interactivity, making education fun. I think that's always been a huge goal and objective for Gene and myself is not only just that if when you're a student, it's already difficult to focus, but you have more bandwidth, you have far more time. When you're a professional working, even more so when you have family, knowing the long hours. So those that work in technology, I mean, it's putting in an 8-hour day would be the exception. I mean, most of us are working 10 to 12-hour days, and so when you do find that time to actually sit down and do some studying or learning something new, you got 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. And so I think this was always in the core of Uxcel: how do we deliver the most impact in the shortest amount of time? And I think that's kind of where kind of the story of Uxcel started. And I think if maybe Gene, if you want to talk to that a little bit of how you kind of came up with the idea and kind of working with Instagram for kind of because really what we started with was the cheapest, most simple MVP, I think, that I've personally ever been part of. I've worked with several different startups where we've kind of built from scratch, but actually a real product. This was a total just no code prototype. So I'll let Gene kind of talk to that a little bit, and then we can kind of go more into the gamification, interactivity, and now I'm kind of to the next steps for Uxcel too, if that's okay, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so like Colin touched, everything started from the Instagram, with the most simple way to test the idea. I think it started in June 2018. Yeah, or 19, 18, I think. 19, yeah, sorry. Time flies by.
No, these are COVID years. These are COVID years.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, a bit more than 2 years ago, I think idea boiled in the head for several months. I was looking into I was starting exploring the Instagram, how the people are presenting themselves as designers, how they do all these little carousels, all these little educational posts. I was also always exploring a lot of articles in Medium. I love the Medium so far. It's a great tool to learn, to upskill. It's just the format. You just need to go and read through 15-20 minutes articles. Often they're really great. And I was kind of thinking, okay, the today-based world, it's really kind of app-driven, everything on the go, amount of information, growing every day tremendously, and the amount of attention for the people is basically decreasing every day. So there is not much of time for people to learn, because it's not to learn, but it's not just average person attention span is kind of decreasing, and is spending all day on the phone. A lot of people attracted and have a kind of bad habit of spending hours and hours on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And a kind of idea came to my mind is how can I bring the learning experience for designers who want to upskill themselves, who want to become better in their environment, which they use every day, which is social media apps. And originally, actually, idea was, okay, how do I bring the knowledge in 3 seconds? And the very first kind of implementation of this idea was basic Instagram post with 2 cards, basically what you see right now on Uxcel, and this is still the core, probably the kind of core gamified mechanism of how we present the learning. So the first Instagram post was just 2 cards and a 3 seconds timer. It was a failure because nobody can actually even understand in 3 seconds what's going on the screen. But that's the MVP. That's how it's all started. And I think first 2 months, collecting tons and tons of feedback with the people out there. I got kind of fortunate. Got highlighted in some of the kind of Instagram aggregated channels. So the idea kind of got picked up by the community, got a lot of followers. We never spent $1, on advertisement on Instagram or whatever. So people just genuinely liked the idea, and over the next, I think, like 6 months, was still continuously improving that, the delivery. That's how we kind of end up with 8 seconds for Instagram. I think we originally started with that for the product, but then extended because the product it's a little bit different. But the kind of interesting story, which I probably like talking about that, is like Colin mentioned, is the cheapest MVP possible, because you have this idea, and I've been working with in a company, and we know what MVP is, and why you want to build MVP. It was like the cheapest and the most probably fastest way to test the idea. So community picked it up, and I think in a couple months, I've originally got a couple, I think like 10 to 20,000 followers in Instagram. Like engagement was super high, like super highly active people out there, and that's where I just start talking with Colin, like, hey, I have this nice idea. And I think he loved it from the first glance. Immediately came up with tons of kind of what we can do, what we can improve. And like in several months, we just agreed, okay, let's get the thing going. Let's start doing like a product. And that's how it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of how UX UI design goes in general. It's always better to collect as much feedback without having to invest a lot of time and effort into something if you can. So the more you talk, and I think that's part of what being a designer is sometimes we think it's like 90% drawing and 10% maybe just testing or researching, but really it should be about 50-50. We really should be talking, collecting information, not just analyzing the data, but also talking to people, kind of getting feedback, iterating. And if you can do that in a way where it's it's affordable and scalable, I think that was probably one of the best decisions I think we ever did. The fact that Instagram already has a massive built-in community to it, and we were able to kind of use some certain mechanisms. Like I think everything with Uxcel was we used 2 products. There was Sketch, and it was Principle, which is like a very basic but great, powerful tool for creating animations and transitions, and you actually get pretty sophisticated with it if you wanted to as well. And so kind of faking the experience, kind of going through and choosing. You're not actually clicking on anything. You can't tap anything like the actual product is now, but from there, we could kind of gauge and see what the interest was of users out there. And so kind of, the long story short was people loved it. And we said, okay, let's build upon this. So kind of getting back to your question now is the kind of the story of the app is somebody posted recently in Slack. And I mean, people have been asking this since day one. Are you going to build an app? Are you going to build an app? Since the beginning of time, basically. I think part of like Uxcel was, I was slightly at the beginning, I was a little bit hesitant to kind of go with an app right at the beginning. Sometimes, obviously having an app in certain situations works perfectly, but we didn't know what we wanted to be at the very beginning. We didn't know where we were going to take the product. We didn't necessarily have product market fit yet. We had a validated idea. We had built an alpha version of the product, but we didn't know what the DNA of Uxcel was going to be. And so we decided to just stick with kind of a web platform for the time being. We built everything using a PWA technology, so progressive web app. Fortunately, it's a really great framework that it makes it very easy if we wanted to not only create just a very nice mobile experience, but also there's a lot of frameworks now where you can wrap it up. So one that we're exploring right now this week is called Ionic. And basically that allows us to very easily take what we built using this PWA and wrap it into an iOS wrapper or an Android wrapper to get it prepared for the respective app stores. And so, right now I just got a message from our lead dev that's saying that the Android version is, and this is just, we started yesterday, the sprint. So we work on 1 week sprints. So it's only Tuesday, I guess, evening now in Belarus. And so the Android version is working now. Obviously it has some problems, but it's only been, 2 days of kind of development. Tomorrow we'll start on the iOS. None of us have any experience in this previously before. So this is kind of a new adventure for us as far as wrapping up in PWA. So, based upon what's going to come out of this sprint, Josefina, it's hopefully we'll have a clear estimation to say, okay, we think by, September, October, hopefully much obvious earlier, but we'll be able to have an app out in the App Store. I know it's kind of fundamental for Uxcel at this point. Not only just kind of looking at the data, but even more importantly is talking with the community, understanding kind of what is missing, and it's obvious. I mean, when you state yourself as we want to be 5 minutes a day to kind of learn new design skills, the only way you're going to get somebody's like attention for 5 minutes per day is when they're on the bus heading to work, or on the train, or not brushing their teeth. That might be a little bit difficult, but you can kind of understand. Yeah, I don't know why that came to my head. Or in between meetings, but the point is, people are on the go. They don't have a lot of time, and so that's really where we want to kind of focus our attention over the next couple months, and then also continue to look at kind of the next step, or like the next evolution of the product it goes as well. And I know that we need more exercises in there. So for the error spotting, I think we're also going to start working probably in the next couple of weeks on another game, which is going to be basically like design definitions game. So kind of utilizing, we have this huge library now of exercises. I think we're a little over 1,000 plus, yeah, probably more than 1,000 exercises right now, spread amongst, I think, 9 courses. So our courses, of course, a lot of them are built all by Uxcel, but we've also recently started working on collaborative courses. So the first course we released was in collaboration with Spline. So Spline is actually another tool based out of South America. It's based out of Chile, Santiago. It's a fantastic tool. I think it won Product of the Year or Design Tool of the Year on Product Hunt. The founder, Alejandro, is fantastic, wonderful person. And so we were put in touch by a product person based out of San Francisco last year. And so we started to collaborate, how could we kind of do something together? Because we're both kind of in startup mode. And so we created a course together called 3D Design Foundations to kind of give you like the overview, the basic theory of 3D design. And now the other great news is I think on August 16th, we're going to be releasing our next collaborative course that we are working on with Balsamic. So it's going to be all about wireframes and working with wireframes. So it's not just applicable for designers, but anybody who wants to get in there and basically explain themselves visually. And that's why wireframes are so powerful. You don't have to be a designer, but you can be a product manager, you can be a QA, you can be a developer, or you can be a beginning designer, right? And allows you to kind of describe what you're looking for, what you want to achieve, or it just allows you to very quickly kind of put together prototypes and test them without having to go there and spend time focused on the UI aspect of things. So that'll be our next collaborative course, and then we're getting started on our third collaborative course with coolers.co. So it's going to be a color psychology course. So I'm really excited about that. I think a lot of the community is, because colors are a very fun and interesting subject. It's it inspires a lot of emotion. It's heavily used in product design. So that's what you can kind of expect as far as the content goes too. Yeah, we get it. So some of those exercises get to basically what we call extreme. So there's in the arcade, I mean, it's not necessarily always made totally clear, but there's 4 difficulties: easy, medium, hard, and extreme. And so some of the extreme ones are incredibly difficult. They could be like literally a difference of a pixel. So if you're able to spot those, my hats off to you, because I'm not even sure that I can spot a lot of those. They're really, really hard. Yeah, exactly. Yep. You guys call it, I think we call it Waldo. You guys call it Wally? Yeah. No, I love those books growing up.
It's actually a great app. It's JavaScript, right? I think I've explored that. I went through all of the 3 levels. I did it by Google, right?
Yeah, well, I think that was initially was a quite scary time for us, because we were basically, as soon as we came out with private beta, or it came into private beta, open up Uxcel for the community. It was pretty much, I think, March, April of 2020, and so the lockdown just started. So obviously it was slightly concerning, apart from everything that was happening in the world, but also, just thinking about Uxcel, we didn't really know how this was going to affect it. But ultimately, what we found is, people were really turning on to online learning. It became fundamental at that point. Schools closed, with resources kind of closed down. Everybody's stuck at home. We found that and I think it's going to continue to go in that direction of more and more utilizing kind of our phones or web apps, things like that, to go ahead and access information. But I think also, to your point too, is it's going to be much more so in the gamification interactive learning sphere. kind of trying to make things as fun and enjoyable, feel like we're getting a sense of accomplishment rather than just going and watching a video or reading a blog. And there's no real kind of there's no product and there's no gamification that period. You might have read that article, but you'll lose that article, that YouTube video. It doesn't necessarily stick around with you. And so those learning new skills that you build from actually going through and engaging with those learning resources vanishes. It just basically evaporates. So that's really what we're trying to do, is kind of build everything inclusively within Uxcel. So everything you do is kind of recorded. You can see yourself growing as you learn new skills, but then also trying to reinforce that with some new products that we've recently put out and we're continuing to invest behind as well. So we have kind of this UX UI skills test as well. So you go through and you take that. You can take it every single month. Everything is kind of analyzed and benchmarked against who's taking it in the community as well. And it kind of gives you kind of that feedback cycle, that loop. So you take the assessment, the test, you kind of see how you performed, what kind of recommendations do we provide for you. And then hopefully after that month, you've learned something new, so you can kind of see yourself hopefully improving that. Yeah. Well, ultimately, that's what we're really trying to set out to achieve, is to kind of dive into these niche topics. We might necessarily, have a ton of information out there, but if there's a lesson that can kind of help you as you're going through your learning process or you're designing something new, we want to make sure that the information is out there and it's easily accessible and you can kind of jump in and then, 5-10 minutes, you'll hopefully learn something new that you can immediately go apply into your workflow as well. So that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish. But I'm glad that you found some value in the Designing for Anxiety, because I think it was a really interesting course for us to put together as well. It's a lot of fun. I would imagine even just like in your dictionaries constantly probably told you that it's, you spelled it incorrectly, or it's going to try to autocorrect to something different. Yeah, it seems like also technology needs to get behind this as well. It's really interesting because I live in Italy and it's a similar type of language, right? With masculine, feminine, and everything. I've never heard of anything here as far as trying to change the language to support that, to be more inclusive. It's very interesting. Yeah, I've seen it walking down at like 2 in the morning when you're headed home, like on the big boulevards. You guys are sitting around drinking coffee at 2 in the morning, still arguing about something, especially when it's politics. Yeah. So speaking about language, then do you think that it's ever been a problem for yourself or perhaps other Latino users of Uxcel that were only in English at this point, or do you think that's been a benefit or a help for the community? Yeah, we've been torn about it because talking with a lot of users as well. So, for example, like one of the first countries I think when we just came out of beta was Brazil. We had a huge kind of growth there and got a chance to know a lot of the users very well. And it kind of went back and forth. Some were saying, yes, we really would like to see this translated, and it's no small feat at all to translate an app. It takes a lot of work if you want to do it well. Obviously, we could maybe integrate with Google Translate pretty easy, and maybe it gets you 90%, 80% of the way there as far as a good translation. But some of the feedback was too, it's like, as a person who's learning UX, UI, and also knowing that the international world of design or technology, I guess I should say, for good or for bad, it's all in English. They were saying that, for me, it's helpful because I'm really having to force myself to learn these new terms, because if I just have everything translated and I go in there, say I'm working with a remote team, and I'm not necessarily totally up to speed, because obviously we know how it's important to save time and to understand all the terminology that we work with. That for some of the users, they said it's been a real big benefit. But now we're trying to kind of balance that and figure out how we can kind of you bring Uxcel to market, but with the ability to make sure you understand key terms, but then maybe translate all the supporting definition and descriptions. So yeah, it's something we've been thinking about, to tell you the truth. We're just not really sure when the right time is to kind of come out with that. Do we want to do like an app first? Do we want to, translation? So what is the next thing we need to kind of invest behind? Because there's a lot. I mean, we're a pretty new startup. We've only been kind of out of private beta about like a year and a couple months. So it's been pretty new for us. Oh, that's great. Okay. I just read about Apple pulling some apps in the United States that were basically for anti-vaxxers. So it's like Tinder, but for those that don't want to get vaccinated. I can't talk to this kind of stuff because I'm a designer and a product manager. I had known nothing about medicine. All I know is, my best friend's a doctor. My uncle's a doctor. They told me to get vaccinated. I'm going to listen to the experts. Who am I to say? We have the entire world. Exactly working behind something together. I think we can achieve anything when we really, set out to accomplish it. Oh, okay. So like a political, economical kind of reason, not because the always. I understand. Studied a lot about Argentina and politics, and doesn't seem like. We'll just leave it at that. So let me ask one more question. So it's kind of coming from your experience as somebody who's getting kind of UX and UI recently, and really like kind of delving in. So you're running kind of your own webinar or kind of podcast to talk with the various designers or creators around the world, or at least those from different disciplines. Kind of what is kind of the biggest problems that you face kind of first jumping into this field as making kind of this change in terms of career direction? As far as education goes, what has been the biggest problem for you right now? Kind of what's lacking out there? I think what you're doing is kind of, it's also great as well as, kind of bringing together the community and trying to also explain, like, there's alternative routes. You don't necessarily have to go get a formal education or a boot camp, because all this information, I would say, is readily available online if you look hard enough. It's packaged up in different ways. Yeah. Well, I guess some of the bigger boot camps are always great too, but you can also, there are some great individuals out there that are doing smaller run boot camps. I think they're a little bit less than 1,000, maybe somewhere in like 400 to 600, but maybe not 4 months, but I think they're big, about 10 weeks. But I think it's, in Argentina, it's a lot of money. That would be a lot of money. Well, I'm sorry. I've heard that several times. That's come up. Well, listen, like as part of our commitment to obviously trying to like provide great education, especially for designers, is anybody in your community or anybody that's like that follows you or whatever, if they were interested in using Uxcel and they find it, if they're coming from Argentina, it's still too expensive, tell them they can always reach out to myself or Gina, and we'll try to figure out a way to make sure that they can get access to Uxcel, because again, it is a very important mission and goal of ours to make sure that we can be inclusive. Obviously, we try to keep things as cheap as possible, but we still unfortunately, we're still kind of beholden to building a business. But let them know that to reach out to us, and we'll try to figure out something that'll work, because I think it's very. No, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you. I look forward to kind of our continuing to get to know each other better, and your wonderful feedback and your support for Uxcel, and anything else kind you need from us, please reach out to us and let us know.
Yeah, thanks, Josephina. It was a pleasure.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, I should say.